I was standing at my grandmother's funeral, clutching a damp tissue and watching the rain hammer against the stained glass windows, when a man in a sharp charcoal suit leaned in and whispered that if I didn't follow him right that second, I'd lose everything she had spent 80 years building. He didn't look like a mourner. He looked like a predator, and the way he glanced nervously toward my own parents made my blood run cold. I want to ask you right now, if a total stranger told you your entire family was lying to you while you were standing over a casket, would you follow him into the shadows or play it safe? I chose to follow, and what I discovered didn't just change my inheritance. It shattered everything I thought I knew about my bloodline. To understand how I ended up in that hallway, you have to understand my grandmother, Evelyn Miller. She was the matriarch of the family, a woman who ran a real estate empire with an iron fist. Growing up, I was her favorite. My siblings were always in trouble, but I was the one who helped her in the garden and listened to her stories about legacy. My parents, however, had a toxic relationship with her. My father, her only son, was always asking for loans that were never repaid. As her health failed, I didn't see sadness in my parents' eyes. I saw a hungry, desperate anticipation for her wealth. The day she passed, the atmosphere changed instantly. My parents didn't even wait for the body to be cold before they started cataloging her furniture. They talked about the windfall over breakfast like they'd won the lottery, showing zero respect for the woman who had kept them afloat for decades. At the funeral, while they were busy dabbing dry eyes and acting like they were at an audition, I noticed Mr. Thorne. He was Evelyn's private legal counsel, someone my parents didn't even know existed. During the final hymn, Thorne slipped into the pew behind me. Your grandmother knew they would try to intercept the transition. He whispered, "They've already called locksmiths to the mansion. If you want the truth, follow me." He signaled toward a side exit leading to the administrative wing of the cemetery. I looked at my father, who was busy checking his gold watch, and I decided to slip away. We walked through the rain toward a small, ivy-covered stone building. Thorne pulled out a heavy iron key and opened a door that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. "In there," he said, "she's waiting. My brain short-circuited. She was dead. I had just seen her in the casket. But when I stepped inside, I didn't see a ghost. I saw a woman who looked exactly like Evelyn, only 30 years younger. It was the aunt I was told had died in a car accident before I was born. So that was the impossible situation. My dead aunt was sitting in front of me, and a lawyer was telling me my parents were thieves. Before I tell you what was in the folder she held and the absolute carnage that followed, I want you to pause. Tell me in the comments, if you found out your parents lied about a family member being dead just to secure money, would you confront them immediately or play the long game to take everything? What would you do? The woman was Aunt Diane. She explained that my parents hadn't just lied about her death. They had tried to have her declared legally incompetent to cut her out of the business. My grandmother had hidden her away, supporting her in secret while Diane worked behind the scenes to audit the company. What they found was staggering. My father had been embezzling millions from Evelyn's accounts for years. He wasn't waiting for an inheritance. He was waiting for her death to cover his tracks. The folder Diane handed me contained every forged signature and every lie. "The house isn't going to the state," Diane whispered. "That was the bait. The entire company is already in your name, held in a trust. But there's a catch. You have to be the one to sign the papers that send your father to prison." The realization hit me like a physical blow. My grandmother hadn't just loved me. She had weaponized me. She knew I was the only one my parents trusted. I walked back into the funeral service just as it was ending. My father approached me, putting a fake, heavy hand on my shoulder. "Where did you run off to, son? Let's go to the house. We have a lot to discuss regarding the estate." I looked him in the eye, the man who had erased his own sister, and I smiled. "I'm sorry, Dad. Let's go." I think we should all be together when the truth comes out." When we arrived at the mansion, my parents were already celebrating with champagne. They were talking about selling off the old junk and remodeling. Then Mr. Thorne walked in, followed by Diane. My mother turned a shade of gray I didn't know a human could turn. She dropped her glass, and it shattered across the marble floor. "Diane," my father gasped, "you're supposed to be dead." Diane finished. "No, just patient." Thorne stepped forward and laid out the terms. Because of the embezzlement, the morality clause in the will had been triggered. My parents were being evicted immediately. They had 1 hour to pack before the police arrived. My father turned to me, begging and screaming that I had to do something. I stood there, holding the folder, and I felt a strange sense of peace. I told him I was doing exactly what grandmother wanted. I was protecting the legacy. I signed the papers right there on the dining room table. The aftermath was a whirlwind. My parents tried to sue, but you can't win against a mountain of evidence. My father took a plea deal and is now bankrupt, living in a tiny apartment 2 states away. My siblings, who sided with him for the payout, were left with nothing. As for me, I took over the company with Diane as my advisor. We turned the mansion into a foundation for elder care and financial protection. I learned that day that family isn't about blood, it's about loyalty. My grandmother taught me one final, brutal lesson. The truth doesn't just set you free. Sometimes it burns everything down so you can build something better on the ashes. Like this video if you think I did the right thing. Subscribe for more stories and share your final thoughts. Did I go too far, or did they get what they deserved? I'll see you in the next story.